If there is something that I learned from reading and watching Jujutsu Kaisen is that the last thing you want to happen happens, and that the worst case scenario is bound to happen. The series has become very well known to subvert its expectations and how you don't really know what's going to happen next and what's the outcome on a particular situation or a particular character. And that's exactly how I felt when watching Junpei Yoshino, a tragic character who sadly towards the very end didn't get the happy ending that a lot of people wish he had. And even to this day, he's still considered the most what if scenario. What would his character journey look like had he still been around? And would he have been able to contribute a lot in future events of Jujutsu Kaisen? But before we talk about any of that, let's just talk about who Junpei is. Junpei was introduced in the second arc of Jujutsu Kaisen that is called the Versus Mojito arc, or as others call it, the Young Fish and Reverse Punishment arc. The arc that heavily focuses on Yuji and Nanami investigating a spike in transfigured human corpses, and the cause of it will be none other than Mojito, one of the most evilest villains. But here's where we also get introduced to Junpei, a boy who has dealt with so much and is living a living nightmare, and that is because sadly he became the victim of bullying. So much so that one of the reasons why he has his hair to the side is because it covers the cigarette marks that he has suffered because of these bullies. And even though he tried at one point to try to create a club in which he could talk about movies, it was sadly taken over by the bullies, making Junpei believe that no matter where he goes or what he does, he's always going to suffer no matter what. And it's because of this that Junpei's viewpoints on humans, but as well as society, are very dark. He views humans as people who have no hearts, and his hatred towards humans becomes very clear as he states very clearly that if a button existed that resulted in him pressing on it would end up killing everyone he hates, he wouldn't press it. However, if a button existed that resulted killing everyone hating him, he would press it with no hesitation. It gives us a clear idea of how just dark his viewpoint on society works. But it will be one encounter in particular that will not only change Junpei's life, but it will also be the thing that will seal Junpei's fate in the very end, and that is his encounter with Mojito. When Junpei was at a movie theater, he ended up being with some people from his school, but these people were not good people. These were people who contributed to his bullying that he was facing. However, they were not the only ones alone in this room, as there was somebody else, this being Mojito, who in the matter of seconds had no problem turning these people into transfigured humans. But upon seeing to what happened to these people, Junpei doesn't really freak out. In fact, he's just more curious on Mojito and tries to catch up with him, which he eventually does. And very quickly, Mojito takes interest in Junpei, but of course for ulterior motives, telling Junpei that the reason why he exists at all is because of the hatred within people, clearly trying to tap into the mind of Junpei, as Junpei was very quick to tell Mojito about his dark views on humanity as a whole. Upon hearing this, Mojito not only encourages Junpei to still have these viewpoints, but also tells Junpei that he is not only 100% correct, but he 100% supports his ideas, hoping that eventually this will lead to Junpei following a dark path. Something that eventually does happen as the more time that he spends with Mojito, and Mojito actually ends up teaching Junpei about curse techniques and how to use it. It makes Junpei believe even more that Mojito is by his side and he is somebody that he can fully trust. But this wouldn't be the only thing that would severely affect Junpei's life. There will be somebody else that would actually affect Junpei's life, but for the better. And this is none other than our MC, Yuji Itadori, who was tasked to keep an eye on Junpei as he became a person of interest during the investigation, as he most likely had contact with Mojito. But during this observation, Yuji will end up having to have some contact with Junpei, but at the same time, he also helped out Junpei out in this moment, as one of his teachers was looking for him to ask if he knew anything about what happened to his classmates at the movie theater, since, according to the teacher, he thought that they were good friends. This of course infuriates Junpei deep inside, because it's very obvious that this teacher is ignorant and didn't know what was actually going on. Upon seeing this, Yuji, seeing that Junpei was clearly not comfortable being around the teacher, decided to get rid of the teacher by pulling down his pants and taking his pants. This of course works, and this will lead to eventually Yuji and Junpei having a friendship, something that Junpei did not expect considering how different their personalities are, but the thing that they're able to talk about frequently is their love for movies. And this of course is something very huge for Junpei, as never in his life did he have someone that he could talk to about the things he liked. Sure, he had his mother, which was the only person that he truly did care for, and she truly did care for him as well, but it's nothing compared to having an actual friend who you can talk to the actual things that you want to talk about. And while Junpei was very cautious around people, with Yuji it was a different case. It almost seemed like he was fully trustworthy of Yuji because he could tell that Yuji had no malicious intent, and Yuji wasn't somebody that was going to pick on him. He was just somebody that was easy to hang out with and was a person that was very easy to get along with. This of course would be a huge change to Junpei's viewpoints towards humans, because beforehand he used to view that everyone had no hearts and that there was not a single good person in society. But here he is talking to somebody that's not from his family who contradicts that belief. And as time goes on, Yuji is even invited to their house for dinner by Junpei's mother. And just like Junpei, Yuji is able to get along with his mother as well, which of course makes Junpei extremely happy, because it just seems that Yuji is somebody that he wouldn't mind being around on a daily basis. And when Junpei finds out that Yuji is part of the Jujutsu sorcerers, just like his interest with Mahito, he also became interested in what Yuji did as a sorcerer, and even asked him if he has any second thoughts when it comes to him having to kill somebody, to which Yuji responds that while it is bound to happen when it comes to what he has to do, he doesn't want to devalue human life, which is once again something that contradicts Junpei's thinking. But despite this being the complete opposite of what he thinks, he's not really against it. He seems to just simply be more interested in Yuji's thinking and tries to understand why Yuji thinks like this, and everything seems to be going very well. It seems that for once, Junpei is able to experience happiness, which is something that he clearly has been wanting to have all throughout his life. But unfortunately, this happiness wouldn't last long because Mahito was still in the picture. Like I mentioned earlier, Mahito was interested in Junpei because all this time he just wanted to use Junpei as a pawn. And when Junpei's mother unfortunately encounters Sukuna's finger, which would result in her death, this would of course devastate Junpei. But Mahito would take this to his advantage, encouraging Junpei to go out for revenge, telling him that most likely the person who was responsible for his mother's death was one of the bullies, more specifically a bully named Shota. And now that he has revenge, and as well going back to his dark ideas, Shota is determined to go to the dark path once again, as in order to get revenge for the person who he believes was responsible for the only person he deeply cared for, his mother. And this is where things start to go down, as Junpei heads towards his school, and upon discovering that Shota is going to get an award in a ceremony, he decides to head towards the auditorium where all the students are. But at the same time, Mahito and the person we thought to be Geto at the time were not that far away, since it will be revealed that the only reason why they needed Junpei at all to begin with was so that they could lure Yuji and Sukuna. And while this plan is already set in motion, Junpei was already initiating his revenge, as he decides to use the curse technique that Mahito taught him on the bully Shota, not only causing him immense pain, but Junpei would proceed to attack Shota while he was on the ground. But of course, upon hearing the commotion, someone would step in, and that is none other than Yuji, who upon seeing what is happening is shocked and tries to get through to Junpei, since at this point Yuji already knew about what happened to Junpei's mother and tried to be there for Junpei. But at this point, Junpei was already so broken that even with Yuji, he didn't listen. His mind was already all over the place, having lost somebody he deeply cared for, and once again this only fueled his idea that nobody was good, that nobody had a heart, and everybody was just simply looking out for themselves. And even though this fight did last a while, the way it ended would ultimately be the end of Junpei, as no surprising, Mahito would betray Junpei, turning him into a transfigured human, which of course will leave Yuji devastated, as he will have to be the one to take out Junpei, not only for his sake but for the sake of Junpei, since at this point Junpei already realized what is happening, and he realized that it was too late for him to go back and just simply wants to get out of his misery, which is exactly what happens, but his death will be the reason why Yuji will be on a fit of rage, determined to not only take out Mahito, but this will also change Yuji's thinking, as there will be some people who deserve to die. And even though Yuji always had the belief that he was always going to hesitate when taking out somebody, this time it was different. This time he didn't care about what happened. He was determined to kill Mahito without hesitation. And even though Mahito unfortunately escaped after getting beaten by Yuji and Nanami together, this of course didn't change the fact that Junpei was no longer around. Junpei sadly died, giving Yuji the grim realization that no matter what he tried to do, no matter what he was wanting to do to help Junpei out, none of it worked, since at the end of the day, nothing he did saved Junpei. And while Junpei wasn't a perfect person, you can't really blame him for having these dark ideas, because Junpei was always mistreated by people and never had anybody to help him out or to be there for him. He was always alone. And after this arc, you come to realize that all this time, Junpei just did not want to be alone. But sadly, Junpei was not only the victim of bullying, but he became a victim of Mahito. He fully believed that Mahito was somebody he could trust and rely on, but Mahito is not human. Mahito is somebody that lacks any sympathy or empathy towards people. And the only thing that he saw in Junpei was just somebody that was so broken that he could take advantage of. And that's exactly what he did. And it was only until the very end that Junpei realized who truly was Mahito. But sadly, it was already too late, as Mahito already showed that he no longer needed Junpei, and it was at that moment that Junpei realized that he was nothing special to Mahito, and he was just something that Mahito can use, and that is to try to take down Yuji. And while tragically this would be the end for Junpei, his passing would actually have a few positives, if you can believe it. For one, this opened Yuji's eyes even more, that there are just some things that are irredeemable, and there are just some groups of evil that need to be taken out quickly and with no hesitation. It made Yuji actually have to now realize more clearly that Mahito and the rest of the people that are involved with him don't deserve a second chance, because if you give them a chance or you let them go, then more people are going to die and more destruction is going to happen. The next thing that changed after Junpei's passing is that the teacher, who was so ignorant of what was going on in Junpei's life, is now determined to end the bullying that was happening in the school once and for all. And even though it's not going to be an easy task, his determination of him trying to stop things and do the right thing was a huge improvement, as he even states himself that from now on he's going to have to pay the sins of him being so ignorant of what was happening to Junpei, since he firsthand saw what Junpei was willing to do to the people that he felt wronged him, to the people that deserved to pay for all the pain that he had to go through. And while this is a good thing to see, sadly it was too late, because had something been done, Junpei would probably have still been around, and he probably wouldn't have had the ideas of going into a dark path. But unfortunately, this is something that's very realistic in the real world, as it takes tragedy for something to finally get taken care of, and it's something that finally gets people to take action, something that should have been done way sooner, that could have resulted a different outcome or could have prevented something from happening to begin with. And that's where I'm going to end today's video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.